وآل محمد صلوات. برباد ہو نہ دشت میں یا رب چمن کوئی، برباد ہو نہ دشت میں یا رب چمن کوئی، لاشوں پہ لاش دیکھنا یوں بے وطن کوئی، برباد ہو نہ دشت میں یا رب چمن کوئی، مظلومی حسین پر گریا ہے کائنات، مظلومی حسین پر گریا ہے کائنات، شبیر سا ہوا نہ غریب الوطن کوئی، شبیر سا ہوا نہ غریب الوطن کوئی، کہہ دے کوئی زمین سے نگل لے فرات کو، کہہ دے کوئی زمین سے نگل لے فرات کو، ساحل پہ 3 دن سے ہے تشنا دہن کوئی، ساحل پہ 3 دن سے ہے تشنا دہن کوئی، اصغر کے منہ کو چوم کے خون رو دیے حسین، اصغر کے منہ کو چوم کے خون رو دیے حسین، یاد آ گئی صغیر کی بچھڑی بہن کوئی، یاد آ گئی صغیر کی بچھڑی بہن کوئی، ارے برچی کا پھل کلیج میں پیوست جب ہوا، برچی کا پھل کلیج میں پیوست جب ہوا، تڑپا سلگتی ریت پر گل پیرہن کوئی، تڑپا سلگتی ریت پر گل پیرہن کوئی، انگشتری کے واسطے انگلی قلم ہوئی، انگشتری کے واسطے انگلی قلم ہوئی، اور لے گیا غریب کا رکھتے کوہن کوئی، اور لے گیا غریب کا رکھتے کوہن کوئی، معصوم جس نے سب کو دعا دی زیر تیغ، معصوم جس نے سب کو دعا دی زیر تیغ، ایسا ہوا نہ دہر میں شاہ زمن کوئی ایسا ہوا نہ دہر میں، شاہ زمن کوئی برباد ہو نہ دشت میں، یا رب چمن کوئی لاشوں پہ لاش دیکھنا، یوں بے وطن کوئی. محمد وآل محمد صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم.
بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم. بھائیوں نے ریکویسٹ ہے پلیز આગળ આવો. વેરી પોલાઇટ રિક્વેસ્ટ.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون، الذي بعد فلا يرى وقرب فشهد النجوى تبارك وتعالى، والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء وخاتم المرسلين وشفيع المذنبين سيدنا ونبينا بالقاسم محمد والأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. واللعنة الدائمة الباقية لأعدائهم ومنكر فضائلهم وغاصب حقوقهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: والمؤمنون والمؤمنات بعضهم أولياء بعض يأمرون بالمعروف وينهون عن المنكر ويقيمون الصلاة ويؤتون الزكاة ويطيعون الله ورسوله أولئك سيرحمهم الله إن الله عزيز حكيم. صلوات پڑھنے کا. In our theme of spiritual development, in the last 2 nights I have been emphasizing on the topic itself in order to realize that the potential that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created in the nafs of the human being. We have to appreciate our own worth, to know what is the possibility, and this is where we went to the help of Imam al-Muttaqeen, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali bin Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam. Who actually clearly says to us that what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to you, there is a possibility that you can elevate yourself to a level above the level of the malaika. And so these are not our own words or from the ulama or the urafa and this and that. This is from Imam al-Muttaqeen himself. And when we talk about this possibility, the potential of reaching to that level, this is only possible if we are able to control our elements and powers of ghazab and shahwat, desire and anger, and bring that in the control of aql. Just to simplify this matter more, let me just give you an example. If we look at the nafs of ourselves, nafs is the king of our domain. Then it has two ministers. There is a minister of defense known as ghazab, and then there is a minister of revenue known as shahwat. Both are very important, but they have this tendency of going overboard to the extreme. And that is where the balance has to come in, where the minister of revenue, shahwat, and the minister of defense, ghazab, are controlled by another entity known as aql, which plays the role of the prime minister. So the nafs is the king, aql is the prime minister, shahwat is the minister of revenue, and ghazab is the minister of defense. If all these entities play their own role within their limits, controlled by the aql, then there is possibility to move forward. Inshallah, we're going to talk about this tonight, talking about this whole issue of what does it mean, what are the steps that we need to take. Tonight, I'll only talk about one step, and then we'll go on. Basically, there are 4 practical steps, and then the 4th one, we are going into 4 other minor steps within it, and that will bring us to the conclusion of our discussion. And so bear with me, and we will come to some very practical, techniques when we talk about the issue of developing our own spiritual dimension. Salawat. But when we talk about developing ourselves spiritually, or even if I use the term reforming ourselves spiritually, we have to realize, first of all, what is the ailment, what is the problem. Reform, as I said, means to look at the problem and to correct it, and to bring the entity to its real form. Because there is deformation taking place where the corruption is there, so we need the reform. But in order to do that, we have to identify the ailment, the illness, the maraz itself. Half of the battle is actually to identify the problem. Let me just give an example from our real life. People like me are approached by many, many individuals. In marital problems, we have, the more bigger community, the more, larger number of problems. And sometimes it's amazing when the husband or the wife calls me and says, these are the problems. And they say, things are not working out. And immediately they come to conclusion, they say, Maulana, it looks somebody has done jadoo on me. A couple might be sitting there in Toronto, for example. They have a cousin in Houston in US. They talk to this cousin, and this cousin knows some amil in Karachi, calls him up, says these are the names of the couple, and this guy sitting in Karachi tells them, yeah, bahut bada jadoo hua hai. What I would like to say is that sometimes when you want to resolve a problem, first of all, identify the problem. In marital issues, instead of looking at the issues, what is the problem with me as a husband? What is the problem with me as a wife? What do I need to correct in my own behavior to improve the relationship? Rather than doing that and looking at ourselves, we always look for outside. Or there's somebody who must have done something on me. And then you will see that the problems will increase, will go on and on and on until it ends, na'uzu billah, to talaq. Because the maraz was not identified. So when we talk about spiritual development, first of all, we have to find out, what is the maraz. Let me give you an example. Since I'm talking about the spiritual heart, compare that with the physical heart. We have this physical heart. You go to the doctor, they do all the tests and everything, and they say either you're healthy spiritually, as far as your heart is concerned, or you're not healthy. And so, go and ask the doctor, what is the function of this physical heart? And they will tell you the function of this physical heart is to pump the blood throughout the body so that it can basically deliver oxygen, and it can also get rid of carbon dioxide. That is the function of what the heart does, pumping blood through the body. So we have the oxygen on one side, and we get rid of the carbon on the other side. You ask the doctor, what is unhealthy heart? And they will tell you, because of blood pressure or other things, the arteries start becoming thicker and hardening. And because of this plaque which is building in the arteries, the flow of blood becomes less and less and less. And if it reaches to the point where the arteries are blocked and the blood is not able to flow, it could end up in what is known as heart attack or heart failure. And so keep that example in your mind, and this is where we have to realize that, our physical, the health of spiritual heart is very important. And if we don't take care of it, even religion says we have to take care of it. When we talk about the issue of maintaining our arteries to be clear, this is not only a medical issue. I was here about 17 years ago. A year after that, and I was still very young, no gray hair. This is not because of my age, this is because of the community, I would say. And when we, so a year after that, before that I had no medical issues at all. I was not on any pills, nothing, I didn't even have a regular doctor, although in Canada medicine is free, medical services. Sometimes maybe in the winter season I would get cold and go just to the walk-in clinic, get the prescription, and that's all. A year after that I had a stroke. It was a mild stroke. And I didn't know what's happening to me, because normally when I used to hear about stroke, that, the hand or the leg or one side or other becomes kind of, immobile. But my problem was the tongue. It's only on a Thursday night Majlis I realized that I'm not able to pronounce some words properly. It's becoming difficult to speak. Even then I didn't realize it was a stroke. Next day in Friday khutbah, I realized between last night and next, afternoon, the problem had increased. This is where I go to the doctor and he says, you have a stroke and you're still walking around. And that's where, they put me into all, alhamdulillah, I came out of it. I'm able to speak now without any problem. And I consider that to be barakat of Bibi Fatima, because I speak in the name of Hussein bin Ali alayhi salatu wasalam. But the point I wanted to come to is that I myself, being in religious studies, never paid attention to ahadith about, importance of the physical health. It's only after I went through that problem, I started paying attention more to those ahadiths. There I realized that there were ahadiths very clear from our 5th and 6th Imam, that when you reach to age 40, the intake of fat, charbi, in your food should become less. It should be so less that the Imam says that by the time you go to bed to sleep, your body should have digested it. But these are the issues I never paid attention before, because I was in the state of ghaflat, and I'll come to that. But when the problem happened, and for me that minor stroke was actually a blessing in disguise. It could have been even worse. I thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for it, that I came to realize that, I have to take care of myself. And so the issue is that when we talk about physical health, it is very important. But I would like to use that as a stepping stone to, emphasize something else. The health of our spiritual heart is very important. And if we don't take care of it, there will be serious consequences. But the ailment or sickness of the spiritual heart would have even more serious consequences. Because when we talk about the nafs of a human being, if that becomes marid, then the consequences are everlasting. It's not only this dunya, but also the akhirah. Salawat padhne ek baar. Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali bin Abi Talib alayhi salam on there's a statement where he says, Ala inna min al-bala. He describes bala, the difficulty and challenges that we can have. And he says, one of the first of the three bala is al-faqa, poverty, to go through hunger. But then he says, وَأَشَدُّ مِنَ الْفَاقَ مَرَضُ الْبَدَنِ. Worse than being poor is to be, physically sick. And then he says, وَأَشَدُّ مِنْ مَرَضِ الْبَدَنِ. But worse than the physical illness is مَرَضُ الْقَلْبِ. The illness of the heart is worse than the illness of the body. On the flip side, he says, وَعَلَى إِنَّ مِنَ النِّعَمِ. When you look at the blessings, he says, the first one is sa'atul mal, to be affluent, not to be in need. وَأَفْضَلُ مِنْ سَعَةِ الْمَالِ صِحَّةُ الْبَدَنِ. But he says even more important than wealth is the health of your body. And then he says, وَأَفْضَلُ مِنْ صِحَّةِ الْبَدَنِ. And more important than your physical health is taqwa al-qalb, the righteousness of your heart. And so on both sides, whether you look at ailment or health, when we talk about the state of the heart, it is at the top priority. And we have to maintain this. And this is where, I will ask the same question I asked about the physical heart. What is the function of the spiritual heart? The function of the spiritual heart is to give light, to show us the path, so we can continue on Sirat al-Mustaqim until we reach to the salvation in the hereafter. And this can only be done if the soul is always kept constantly clean and pure. قَدْ أَفْلَهَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا. And what is the unhealthy spiritual heart? This is when we allow the accumulation of sins and wrongdoings. It comes on the soul in a symbolic level, that even though the light would be inside, it will not be able to show us the path. And that is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. Failure is the person who has allowed his soul to become spiritually dirty and corrupt. If we look at it, and the Quran actually in Surah Mutaffifin, ayat number 14, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually talks about this spiritual heart attack. We only know about a physical heart attack. In Surah Mutaffifin, where he talks about the evildoers, describes them, and then he says, كَلَّا بَلْرَانَ عَلَىٰ قُلُوبِهِمْ مَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ. All these evil and bad that they have done, why? Because ma kanu yaksibun, the sins that they have acquired, rana ala qulubihim, the sins have seized their hearts. This concept of seizure of the heart on a spiritual level is also there in the Quran itself. So we pay attention to the physical heart attack, which is very important. We have to prevent that. But we also have to be even more careful about the seizure of the spiritual heart. Rana ala qulubihim. The word rana means something which covers something else. The sins, when they cover the nafs, they actually seize it. And then it is not able to fulfill its function. Salawat. And so what is the fundamental problem that we have to look at when we talk about the process of, spiritually refining ourselves, reforming ourselves, developing ourselves? The fundamental problem basically can be summarized in one word: ghaflat. Ghaflat means heedlessness. Ghaflat means carelessness. Ghaflat means inattention. Ghaflat means to be indifferent to important issues. And this is the fundamental problem in the spiritual, wayfaring. When a person for the first time comes to realize that I have a problem, this is where he is getting out of the ghaflat. There are many people who have everything, but they are still ghafil. Last night I recited an ayat from Surah Araf, and I would like to repeat that tonight. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes who are the ghafilun, who are the people who have ghaflat. This is in context of the people who have been given the faculties of aql, the sight and the ears and everything, but they do not use it in the right way. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says they are the ghafilun. لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ لَا يَفْقَهُونَ بِهَا. They have been given mind and aql, but they do not use it for reflection. وَلَهُمْ أَعْيُنٌ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ بِهَا. They have been given the eyes. They see things, but they do not reflect and learn lessons from what they see. وَلَهُمْ آذَانٌ لَا يَسْمَعُونَ بِهَا. They have ears. It's not that their ears are defective and they are deaf. No, they can hear, but they do not use it to listen to the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Listening is one thing, and hearing is one thing, and listening is something else. People hear from one side, it goes out from the other side. But when people listen to things, it goes in, then it goes down into their heart. And that is the process of listening, where a person will then think about it. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أُولَٰئِكَ كَالْأَنْعَامِ. Such people are like cattle. بَلْ هُمْ عَضَلْ. They are even worse than them. أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْغَافِلُونَ. These are the people who are suffering from ghaflat, and they are the heedless and the ghafilun people. Salawat. Let me try to simplify this. What does it mean when we say we have to use our eyes and our ears and our minds to look through things? MashaAllah, this world has become very small. People now have more ability to travel around the world. And people would like to go and visit. Tourism is a big business in the world now. Many people go to Egypt. And I'm sure some of you have gone there. If not exactly for Egypt itself, maybe for Umrah or something, where you go to, stay for a day or two in Egypt, so you went around. And what do you go and see in Egypt? You look at the pyramids. You look at the ruins of the palaces of the Fir'aun and the Fara'ina. And we come back with this, sense of marvel of human civilization. Centuries ago, people were able to build such huge monuments, although now they are in ruins. We come with that appreciation and we say, well, a human being is good. He has done quite a lot. And we do not deny that. We do not say this is wrong. But the point is that when you go there and you see all these things, even when you look at the body of Fir'aun, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, as I said in the Friday khutbah, that I'm preserving the body of Fir'aun as a sign for the people who will come later on. How many people, when they look at the mummy of Fir'aun, reflect on it? When we look at the pyramid, have we thought about how this was built? On the back of the slaves, who really were not even paid in the right way? Where hundreds, if not thousands of their them were killed. They died in that process. We don't reflect about it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Dukhan talks about it, where He says, when you go to Egypt and when you look at the ruins of Fir'aun and what they had from this dunya, He says, think about it. كم تركوا من جنات وعيون وزروع ومقام كريم ونعمة كانوا فيها فاكهين. Think about it. How much they had of the gardens and the rivers in their palaces, زروع, plantation and farms, ومقام كريم, and noble palaces that they had built, ونعمة كانوا فيها فاكهين, and the luxuries and the blessings in which they were living happily. Karbala, Allah says, yes, they had all that. But what happened at the end? When we go to those monuments, do we reflect on what was the end of the Fir'aun? Or do we only look at the Zahir, that this is the achievement of the human civilization? Think about the end result. And that is where you reflect on issues. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Kavalik, yes, they had all this. وَأَوْرَثْنَاهَا قَوْمًا آخِرِينَ. But what happened at the end? We killed them. We destroyed them and made their all worldly possessions to become inheritance of other people. فَمَا بَكَتَ عَلَيْهِمُ السَّمَاءُ وَالْأَرْضُ وَمَا كَانُوا مُنْزِرِينَ. Neither the heaven cried on them, nor the earth cried on them when they died. And they were not given any respite and chance. When the time came, it came. And so when I talk about using the aql, the eyes and the ears and other faculties that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to us, yes, we go and look at those things, no problem about it. I am not saying here don't go for visitation and tourism. No, go around the world. But go with this reflection on what you learn from it. When you look at the body of Fir'aun, and let me repeat this example I used in Friday khutbah. It's a sad irony that Mubarak lived on the revenues of tourism, where people used to come and look at the pyramids and the mummy of Fir'aun, but he used Fir'aun, the mummy of Fir'aun, as a revenue, but he did not look at it as an ayat for himself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I am making this as an ayat for the people who will come khalfak, who will come after you. If Mubarak had looked at that mummy and realized that this was a king more powerful than me, and what was the end result of him, he would have changed himself. So you can have things, you can look at things, but it's not going to help. You are in the state of ghaflat until you learn lessons from what you see in front of yourself. Salawat Pranik Bara. I'm from India. One of the wonders of the world is Taj Mahal. And I myself took my family there to visit it. And I'm not saying don't go there. But the point I would like to make is, when you go and look at it, what do you come back with? Yes, it is a marvel of human, endeavor, architecture. If you look at the pillars around the main building, from any angle, it is absolutely straight. This is the 17th century monument, built by Shah Jahan. But then you start thinking about the history of it. The king who built it, what was this? Looks like a haram or a masjid with the dome and the minarets and everything. But it is not. It was the monument of love, his respect, his devotion to his wife, Mumtaz Mahal. That vast land around it, the building around it, he could still have the grave of his wife right there, but this could have been an institution of education. This could have been a madrasa. This could have been a hospital. if really he had thought about it in that way. Think about it. A person who built this monument out of love for his wife, what happened to him? What was his life? You know, his son, Aurangzeb, comes in and deposes the father. And as we know, al-mulku aqim, kingdom doesn't have any relatives. The father will kill the son will kill the father. The son overthrows the father, puts him in prison in a fort just other side of the river there, in a basement room with a small window from which the father could always look at Taj Mahal. He says, I'm giving you this much of a, what do we call, bakshish. I'm not killing you. I'm putting you in this. This is his own father. What do we learn from this? What kind of silatul rahim they had? What kind of family life they had? We just look at this building and come out with, amazement, marvel of human endeavor. Yes, these are good things. But think about it. When the builder of Taj Mahal died, he didn't even have a decent funeral. 2 servants were told to bring his body to that Taj Mahal, and he was buried secretly beside his wife. That is the end. And we just look at the zahir of things. We don't look at the aqibat. And this is where we have to reflect about these issues. We see things around us. We look at lives of people around us. And this is where we have to realize that we need to have reflection. And only then we will come out of this state of ghaflat, indifference, and heedlessness. Salawat. It's not that we are told not to go around the world and go for tourism. No, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself says do that. Where he says, أَفَلَمْ يَسِيرُ فِي الْعَرْضِ, do not you travel in the earth. For what? Because when you travel to different parts of the world and look at the ruins of the ancient civilization, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if you use it, your visit in the right way, فَتَكُونُ لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ يَعْقِلُونَ بِهَا. Do not you travel in the earth? If you go and travel and reflect, then you will have the minds and the intelligence which uses the intelligence. يَعْقِلُونَ بِهَا. They use the reflection. وَعَذَانٌ يَسْمَعُونَ بِهَا. And so that people can have the ears by which they listen. You can listen to the message of Allah through the body of Fir'aun. Because that is an ayat for you even now. فَإِنَّهَا لَا تَعْمَى الْأَبْصَارُ وَلَكِنْ تَعْمَى الْقُلُوبَ الَّتِي فِي الصُّدُورِ. Because it is not the eyes which become blind. What becomes blind are the hearts within you. And so when we talk about spiritual development, the first step is to get out of this spiritual blindness, to open our eyes and get out of the state of ghaflat. Salawat. MashaAllah, the mu'mineen from East Africa in large numbers and other parts of the world also go for the Arba'een of Sayyid al-Shuhada these days. Look at the example of that visit. Imam Hussain alayhi salam was killed. From the worldly point of view, it was a defeat in a way. But reflect about it. What happened at the end? Do people remember Yazid? Or do they even know where is his grave? Imam Hussain alayhi salam, the enemies tried again and again to even erase the mark of his grave. Mutawakkil came. He tried and failed. Many mutawakkils came. During our own time, we have Saddam Mal'oon. You know, think about the palaces that he had built in Iraq. Some of them he didn't even get chance to go and spend one night there. Huge palaces. What was his end? He was sitting on this oil, millions of dollars, biggest Arab army of the modern times. What was the aqibat and the end result? This is where you have to learn the, ibrat. A person that built so many palaces, with money with him, wealth with him, army with him, where was he arrested? In a hole. A live person living in a grave. That is the end of a person like Saddam. He was afraid of even the ziyarat of Arba'in of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. He has forbidden people to go for the ziyarat of Arba'in. And you see what happens now. Saddam is gone. While he was alive, he couldn't use everything that he had from this dunya. While he was still alive, he was living in a grave in a way. And look at Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. His name is still there. His shrine is still there. And people are coming for Ziyarat Arba'in in millions, more than the days of Saddam and before him. And this is where we have to realize that, the aqibat is more important. We have to look at the end result. And that can only happen if we open the eyes of our heart. We have to get out of this blindness of the heart, and that is where we'll get out of the ghaflat. Salawat pranay ek baar aur. Our spiritual master, supreme spiritual master Ali, in one of the khutbahs, very beautifully, he says, فَأَفِقْ أَيُّهَا السَّامِ مِنْ سَكْرَتِكَ وَاسْتَيْقِظْ مِنْ غَفْلَتِكَ. O my listener, he says, sober up from your intoxication. You are drunk because of the materialism of this dunya. Come out of this drunkenness. Sober up. وَاسْتَنْقِذْ مِنْ غَفْلَتِكَ. And wake up from your ghaflat and heedlessness. And that is the first step of spiritual building, to get out of this indifference to the reality of akhirah and success in the hereafter. In one of the khutbahs, and this is khutbah number 82, he has a very powerful statement I haven't seen anywhere else. And indeed, when the ulama say, Kalamul Amir is Amirul Kalam, this is indeed a true statement. Ibn Abdul Hadid al-Mu'tazili says that the kalam of Amirul Mu'minin is above the level of the kalam and the speech of human beings and just beneath the divine speech. There is one statement where he talks about the transient nature of this dunya. He says, you long for this dunya, you work so hard for this dunya, this is going to go away. And then he says, it's not a bad thing. He just says, it depends how you look at the dunya. مَنْ أَبْصَرَ بِهَا بَصَّرَتْهُ وَمَنْ أَبْصَرَ إِلَيْهَا أَعْمَتْهُ. Listen to these words. He says, whoever looks through it, through the dunya will enlighten him. And whoever looks at the dunya will blind him. Think about it. Tonight, this is the homework I have for you. Think about it. What he is saying. He says a person who looks through the dunya, he will be enlightened by the dunya. But the person who looks at the dunya, he will be blinded by the dunya. Means look at the dunya, the transient nature, the passing nature of this dunya. Look at the example of Namrud and Fir'aun and Saddam of our time and the Mubarak. And then you'll realize that this is not something you should be worrying about that much. And you will learn the lesson from the dunya itself. When he says look through it and look at it, let me give you an example. Because this is not an easy concept to digest. We have mirrors at home, each one of us. Before we leave home, we always look at ourselves in the mirror, just to make sure we are presentable. There's nothing wrong with it. Even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to be presentable in the society. But sometimes the mirror is a very simple one, and sometimes it has all these very good frame and decoration around it. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, look through the dunya, don't look at the dunya. Suppose you have a very beautiful mirror with a good, frame, maybe, the shells around it, and somebody looks at it for the first time and is so much amazed by the frame that is looking around at the frame and thinking about the mirror, how expensive is this and this and that. This is known as looking at the mirror. But what is the function of the mirror? Do you look at the frame of the mirror when you look at the mirror? No. You actually have to look through the mirror at your own image. That is the function of the mirror. Amir al-Mu'mineen is saying, don't look at the dunya, look through the dunya. Look at your own image in the dunya, in form of others who have come before you. What they had and what happened to them. So look through the dunya, don't look at the dunya. Because if you look through the dunya will enlighten you. And if you look at the dunya, this dunya will blind you. Salawat padhne ek baar aur. And once we get out of this state of ghaflat, the first step in spiritual, building is known as the manzil or the maqam of yaqza. Yaqza means now a person is awakened. He is no more ghafil, he is no more heedless, he is no more indifferent. Rather, he is awake now. He knows what I want, or what is my destination, and where I would like to go. And so yaqza, awareness, awakening, bidari, this is the first step in what we call tazkiyah nafs. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about it in a beautiful way when he talks about the qiyamah, where he says, لَقَدْ كُنْتُ فِي غَفْلَةٍ مِّنْ هَذَا. On the day of qiyamah, talking to an individual who was in ghaflat, Allah says, in this dunya you were heedless, indifferent to this day of qiyamah. فَكَشَفْنَا عَنْكَ غِطَاعَكَ. Today we have removed the veils from you, from your eyes. فَبَصَرَكَ الْيَوْمَ حَدِيدٌ. Now your eyes today is very sharp. You were blinded because of the dunya, in this dunya, and you were ghafil. Today I am going to lift the veils. Your eyes will become very sharp. And that is the state that we have to reach to right in this dunya. Before we are made awake in the akhirah, we need to open up our eyes in this dunya. And this is the first step in spiritual building. Unless we overcome this issue of ghaflat, open our eyes, we will not be able to take the second and the third and the fourth step. Karbala for itself is a means of that yaqza and bidari and awakening call. Every year we get this opportunity. We go through a phase. Ramadan is there, we'll talk about it later on, and MUHARRAM is there. We're going through a whole year now, MUHARRAM comes again. We sit down. This becomes the opportunity for us to open up the eyes of our heart and look at the reality again, become bidar again. And when we become bidar again, we can appreciate the message of Imam Hussain alayhi salam and move forward. Let me share with you tonight, as I said, I would like to relate this theme with the events of Karbala. There were two individuals who were initially in the state of ghaflat, indifference. But then guidance came to them. One is a negative example wherein even though the guidance came to him, he was not able to absorb it and accept it. Another person on the same level and same situation goes through this level of coming out of ghaflat, becoming bidar, going through the stage of yaqza and awakening, and then he takes the right direction and right step. The first is the example of Amr ibn Sa'd. Amr ibn Sa'd, who was the commander-in-chief of the Yazidi army. You know, this is where he had the knowledge. He was from Quraysh. He knew Rasulullah, he knew the family of Rasulullah, he knew Bani Hashim, he knew Imam Hussain alayhi salam. And when Ibn Ziyad asked him, because he was under in the jurisdiction of Ibn Ziyad, that before you go to your new mission that I have given to you, to be the governor of the city of Ray, which is near Tehran, he says, I have a mission that I would like you to accomplish. And, you know, Umar ibn Sa'd tries to get out of it. He says, you know, I'm already packed up, ready to go to Ray. You know, depute somebody else to do this. And Ibn Ziyad says, no, you have to do it. And if you don't do it, the position that I given to you as governor of Ray, I will take it back. Umar ibn Sa'd now knows he is to make a choice here. And see, he asked for one night to reflect and think about it. This is where we come to realize he was not an ignorant person. He goes to his family members. Interestingly, almost all of them say, don't do this. One of his nephews actually says that even if you have to lose your wealth, your prestige, your governance, that will be better than meeting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the blood of Hussein on your hands. Leave everything, sacrifice everything. Don't do this, what Ibn Ziyad is asking. He spent the whole night thinking about it. He actually was able to express his struggle within in poetry, which historians have recorded, where he says, أَأَتْرُكُ مُلْكُ الرَّأْيِ وَالرَّأْيُ مَنِيَّةٌ. Do I abandon the governorship of Ray, while Ray and the governorship of that city is my desire? أَمْ أَرْجِعُ مَضْمُومًا بِقَتْلِ الْحُسَيْنِ. Do I abandon that, or do I go for killing Hussein and come back blameworthy for killing him? في قتله النار التي ليس دونها حجاب وملك الرأي قرة عيني. He says, in killing Hussein, there is no doubt that I will be sent to Jahannam. But what can I do? The governance of Ray is the apple of my eyes. So this person is faced with this challenge. One hand you have this desire. On the other hand, you have something that if you go into it, this is where you'll go into Jahannam if you kill Hussein. Goes to Ibn Ziyad next morning and again says there are other people capable enough in Kufa who can do this. Relieve me of this. And Ibn Ziyad says, no, I will take your home, I will take your wealth, I might even kill you if you don't do this. And this is where Umar ibn Sa'd signs his own death sentence of the Akhirah and accepts Jahannam. On the 5th of Muharram, he goes with 4,000 horsemen under his command. Reaches Muharram, reaches Karbala, sends a message to Imam Hussain, why have you come here? And Imam responded by saying that the people of Kufa had asked me, but if they don't want me anymore, I'll go back to Medina or somewhere else and live like an ordinary citizen. Umar ibn Sa'd tried his best to get out of this situation. He wrote a message to Ibn Ziyad saying that Hussein is willing to go back if the people of Kufa no more want him. And so this is the end of the story. But Ibn Ziyad sent him another letter saying, no, ask him to do bay'at for Yazid or arrest him and bring him to me. Ibn Ziyad knew, and these are his words by Tabari and other historians, that I will not even convey this message of Ibn Ziyad to Hussein because I know Hussein will never do bay'at of Yazid. Why? Because Hussein has the same heart within him, which was the heart of Ali bin Abi Talib. Even Umar bin Sa'd knew that just as Ali didn't do bay'at, Hussein will never do bay'at. And so then a time comes where Imam Hussein alayhi salam actually takes the initiation of asking Amr ibn Sa'd, I would like to see you face to face. A tent was erected between the two camps. At the fixed time, Umar ibn Sa'd came with his group of soldiers. Imam Hussein alayhi salam also came with his people. When they got close, they asked their companions to leave them alone. Imam only went with the slave, Uqba bin Sum'an. And Umar ibn Sa'd also came with his servant. And they were sitting in the tent alone. In different, conversation, and this happened more than once. Imam actually invited him. He says, why you work with them? Why don't you come and support me? And they said, he says to Imam Hussein, Ibn Ziyad will destroy my home. Imam says, I will rebuild it for you. Umar ibn Sa'd says, Ibn Ziyad will take my possession, my wealth. Imam says, I have a very rich and big property outside Medina, I'll give that to you. In place of that, he says, I'm afraid for my family. And Hussein says, I will arrange for the safety of your family. What else do you want? And still this person doesn't come out of his ghaflat. What else do you want when you have Hussein ibn Ali, Sayyid al-Shabab, Ahl al-Jannah, guiding you? You want dunya, he's giving you the dunya. And if you go with him, you also get the akhirah. But this is where we see, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ. This is Umar ibn Sa'd. He chose to be at the lowest of the low. And this is where when we talk about spiritual development, we have to realize there are barriers in between, in form of family, in form of wealth, in form of prestige, in form of, the position that we want in the dunya. But the people who have the insight, those whose eyes of the heart are open, see through it, and they know that the salvation is not in this dunya, it is in the akhirah. And that is where we come to the example of Hur. Imam Hussain alayhi salam के सामने दो मिसालें थी. ये हम लोगों के लिए सबक है कि इंसान कभी कभी अपने इस रूहानी और तस्किए नफ्स के राह में मुख्तलिफ मवाने आते हैं, बैरियर्स आते हैं, लेकिन जब तक हमारे पास वो आँख न खुली हो जो दिल की आँख है, हमें रोशनी नहीं मिलेगी. हमें अपने क़ल्ब और नफ्स को गुनाहों के इस कवर से हमें साफ़ करना होगा. हम मासूम नहीं हैं, लिहाजा ये तौबा का सिलसिला जो है कंटिन्यूस होना चाहिए. कंटिन्यूस प्यूरिफिकेशन का प्रोसेस होना चाहिए ताकि खुदावंद आलम ने जो नूर हम में पैदा किया है उस नूर से हम रास्ते को आगे देख सकें. उमर इब्न साद ने इन गुनाहों को एक्यूमुलेट किया था, रास्ते को आगे नहीं देख सका. हुर की मिसाल को देखें, वो भी कमांडर थे यजीदी लश्कर के. 1000 हॉर्समैन कैवलरी फोर्स के वो कमांडर थे. इब्न ज़ियाद ने भेजा था कि इमाम के काफ़िले को जहाँ भी मिले गिरफ्तार करके ले आए कूफा. जिन हालात में ये लश्कर पहुँचा है इमाम हुसैन अलैहिस्सलाम के पास, आप वाक़यात को जानते हैं, बचपने से सुनते चले आए हैं, बहुत इख्तिसार से हमें काम लेना है. इमाम हुसैन अलैहिस्सलाम के कमाल को देखें, इमाम के शरफ़ को देखें, इमाम की करामत को देखें, امام کی عظمت کو دیکھیں، امام کی انسانیت کو دیکھیں۔ ہم اس امام کے ماننے والے ہیں کہ جب لشکر سامنے آیا ہے، صرف چہروں کو دیکھ کے امام نے دیکھا کہ یہ پیاسے ہیں، اپنے جوانوں کو حکم دیتے ہیں کہ پانی کے مشکیزیں لے آؤ، انہیں سیراب کرو اور ان کے جانوروں کو بھی سیراب کرو۔ لشکر حر میں آخری سپاہی جو پہنچا ہے ذرا لیٹ پہنچا تھا، اور امام نے دیکھا کہ وہ بہت ہی زیادہ پیاسا لگتا ہے۔ امام نے انتظار نہیں کیا کہ ان کے جوان اور غلام آگے بڑھے، خود ہی مشکیزہ لے کے اس کے پاس جاتے ہیں اور اس سپاہی کو، آخری سپاہی کو سیراب کرتے ہیں۔ حسین یہ نہیں پوچھتے ہیں کہ تم دشمن بن کے آئے ہو یا دوست بن کے آئے ہو، انسانیت کا ثبوت دیتے ہیں۔ ہم اس امام کے ماننے والے ہیں۔ یہ آئسس و طالبان یہ وہ لوگ ہیں جو بنو امیہ کے فالوورز ہیں، یہ ان کے مینیفیسٹیشن اور مظہر ہیں۔ ہم کبھی بھی ہم مظلوم ہوں گے لیکن ان کے ظلم کے لیول پر ہم نہیں پہنچیں گے، مظلومیت کو ہم برداشت کریں گے۔ اور یہ در حقیقت ایک طریقہ تھا۔ امام حسین امام نور ہیں، وہ جانتے ہیں کہ اخلاق کے ذریعے ہم بھی لوگوں کو اپنی طرف کھینچ سکتے ہیں۔ ظہر کے وقت کا وقت ہوتا ہے نماز کا، امام نے حر سے پوچھا کہ تم نماز اپنی الگ قائم کرو گے یا ہمارے ساتھ پڑھو گے؟ یہ پہلی علامت ہے کہ حر کا نفس پاک تھا، اس میں خباثت نہیں تھی۔ وہ کہتا ہے کہ نہیں، آپ نواسہ رسول ہیں، نماز آپ پڑھائیں، ہم لوگ شامل ہوں گے آپ کے ساتھ، آپ کے اقتداء میں نماز پڑھیں گے۔ نماز کے بعد دونوں گروہ الگ ہو جاتے ہیں۔ عصر کا وقت آتا ہے، دوبارہ اذان و اقامہ ہوتی ہے، دوبارہ حر اپنے لشکر کے ساتھ حسین کی اقتداء میں نماز پڑھتے ہیں۔ اب امام نماز کے بعد کھڑے ہوتے ہیں، اس لیے کہ امام کی ذمہ داری ہے جہاں ممکن ہو سکے وہ انسان جس میں ایبیلٹی ہے، پوٹینشل ہے، ظرفیت ہے کہ وہ ہدایت حاصل کریں، ہم اس کی ہدایت کریں گے۔ نماز کے بعد امام کھڑے ہوتے ہیں، ایک مختصر خطبہ بیان کرتے ہیں کہ میں نے اپنے جد سے رسول اللہ سے سنا تھا کہ جہاں فرماتے ہیں کہ من رعا سلطانا جائرا، اگر ایک انسان ظالم بادشاہ کو دیکھے جو ظلم کر رہا ہے، سنت نبوی کے خلاف اور قرآن کے خلاف عمل کر رہا ہے، اور وہ انسان ان حالات کو دیکھنے کے بعد انڈیفرنٹ ہو جائے، خوش نہ کرے، نہ عمل سے نہ ورڈز میں، تو خداوند عالم کو حق پہنچتا ہے کہ قیامت کے دن اس وقت اس انڈیفرنٹ انسان کو خداوند عالم اس ظالم کے ساتھ محشور کرے۔ حسین میسج دے رہے ہیں اور خطبہ ختم ہو گیا۔ پھر جب قافلہ تیار ہوتا ہے آگے بڑھنے کے لیے، اس وقت حر نے آگے بڑھ کے کہا حسین ہمیں حکم ملا ہے کہ آپ کو ہم اپنے ساتھ امیر کوفہ کے پاس لے جائیں۔ امام نے کہا کہ تمہاری جرأت نہیں ہو سکتی ہے، تمہیں لڑنا پڑے گا۔ اور امام اب قافلے کو آگے بڑھانا چاہتے ہیں۔ حر نے آ کے جب تک بات ہو رہی تھی امام نے نرمی سے کام لیا ہے۔ جہاں حر نے آ کے امام حسین علیہ السلام کے گھوڑے کے لگام کو پکڑا ہے، یہ ایک لحاظ سے ایگریشن تھا۔ اس وقت حسین نے حیدر کی اس جوش اور شجاعت اور غصہ کا مظاہرہ کیا ہے۔ کہتے ہیں حر میرے گھوڑے کے لگام کو مت پکڑو، تیری ماں تیرے غم میں روئے۔ یہ عرب کلچر میں ایک طریقہ تھا کسی کو ہیومیلیٹ کرنے کے لیے کہ تم نے جو کام کیا یہ صحیح نہیں ہے، بلکہ ہم تمہارے مرنے کی دعا کرتے ہیں اور تیری ماں جو ہے تیرے غم میں روئے۔ اس وقت حر کا جو جواب تھا اس سے اندازہ ہوتا ہے کہ یہ معرفت رکھتا تھا یہ کون ہے۔ کہتا ہے حسین اگر آپ کی جگہ کوئی اور ہوتا تو ہم اس کی ماں کا نام لیے بغیر نہ رہتے، لیکن ہماری مجبوری یہ ہے کہ آپ کی ماں وہ ہیں کہ جن کا ذکر سوائے خیر کے اور نہیں ہو سکتا ہے۔ امام نے کہا تم کیا چاہتے ہو؟ کہنے لگے مجھے حکم ہے ہم آپ کو کوفہ لے جائیں۔ امام نے کہا اس کے لیے ہم تیار نہیں ہیں، تم چھوڑو اپنے لشکر کو، میں اپنے اصحاب کو چھوڑ دیتا ہوں، آؤ ہم اور تم لڑ لیں۔ ہم قتل ہو جائیں گے تو تمہارا مقصد حاصل ہو جائے گا، اگر ہم جیت جائیں گے تو تم ہمیں چھوڑ دو۔ حر نے کہا کہ نہیں، ہمیں حکم نہیں ہے کہ ہم آپ سے لڑیں، اور نہ ہم چاہتے ہیں کہ آپ سے لڑیں، ہمیں حکم ہے کہ آپ کو گرفتار کر کے لے آئیں۔ امام نے کہا یہ نہیں ہو سکتا۔ یہاں پر حر کہتا ہے اچھا آپ ایک درمیانی راستہ اپنائیں، نہ کوفہ جاتے ہو نہ مدینہ جاتا، جب تک ہم فردر انسٹرکشنز کے انتظار میں رہیں گے ابن زیاد کی طرف سے۔ یہ قافلہ اسی طرح سے آگے بڑھا، 2 محرم کو کربلا پہنچتے ہیں۔ عمر بن سعد اپنے لشکر کے ساتھ 5 محرم کو پہنچتا ہے، 4 یا 5 محرم کو، اور پورے کنٹرول معاملات کو اپنے ہاتھ میں لیتا ہے ایز کمانڈر ان چیف۔ حر کو 9 محرم تک اطمینان تھا کہ یہ معاملات جو ہیں پیسفل نیگوسیشن میں ختم ہو جائیں گے، صلح ہو جائے گی، جنگ کی نوبت نہیں آئے گی۔ لیکن شب عاشور عصر 9 کی عصر کے وقت، 9 محرم کی، جب شمر ملعون آتا ہے، اس حکم کے ساتھ عمر بن سعد کے نام کہ تمہیں جو مشن دیا گیا ہے اس پر یا عمل کرو، اگر عمل نہیں کر سکتے ہو تو کمانڈ جو ہے شمر کو دے دو۔ اس وقت جو ہے عمر بن سعد نے پھر تیاری کی، لشکر کو آگے بڑھایا حملے کے لیے۔ آپ تمام واقعات کو جانتے ہیں، امام نے جناب عباس اور دوسروں کو بھیجا، 1 رات کی مہلت مانگی۔ یہ رات جو ہے حر کے لیے بڑی مشکل گزری ہے۔ اس سے پہلے تک اس کو یہ اطمینان تھا کہ معاملات جنگ تک نہیں پہنچیں گے، حسین سے لڑنا نہیں پڑے گا۔ وہ نہیں چاہتا تھا کہ حسین کے خون میں ملوث ہے اس کا ہاتھ۔ لیکن شب عاشور کے حالات کو دیکھنے کے بعد اسے یقینی ہو گیا کہ جنگ ہو کے رہے گی۔ صبح عاشور عمر بن سعد کے پاس جانے کے بعد وہ خود کہتا ہے امقاتل انت هذا الرجل، اے عمر بن سعد تو اس انسان کے ساتھ لڑو گے؟ تو اس وقت عمر بن سعد نے کہا یا ہم یقیناً لڑیں گے، اور بہت ہی سخت جنگ ہوگی۔ اس وقت حر کہتے ہیں کہ کیا جو آپشنز حسین نے دیے ہیں وہ تمہارے لیے ایکسیپٹیبل نہیں ہے؟ عمر سعد کہتا ہے کہ اگر ہماری بات ہوتی تو ہم مان لیتے، لیکن بات یہ ہے کہ ابن زیاد ہمارا امیر جو ہے اس پہ تیار نہیں ہے۔ خود حر کا بیان ہے، پوری رات ہم نے گزاری ہے، اخیر نفسی بین الجنت والنار، پوری رات ہم نے اپنے کو جنت اور جہنم کے درمیان پایا۔ I was at the crossroads، ادھر جائیں یا ادھر جائیں۔ صبح عاشور جب یقین ہو گیا کہ جنگ ہو کے رہے گی، حر اپنی اس روشنی کی بنیاد پر جو اس کے دل میں تھی، دل کے صفائی کی بنیاد پر، تزکیہ نفس کی بنیاد پر وہ فیصلہ کرتا ہے کہ ہمیں یہ سرداری نہیں چاہیے، ہمیں یہ انعام نہیں چاہیے، ہمیں یہ پروموشن نہیں چاہیے، مجھے یہ شہرت نہیں چاہیے، مجھے کچھ نہیں چاہیے اس دنیا کا، جو کچھ ہمیں چاہیے حسین سے چاہیے۔ لہٰذا اپنے گھوڑے کو لیتے ہیں، اپنے لشکر سے ذرا دور ہوتے ہیں، اتنا دور ہو جاتے ہیں کہ لشکر والے اگر چاہتے تیر سے حملہ کرنے کے لیے تو ان کے تیر وہاں نہ پہنچتے، اور اس کے بعد گھوڑے پر بیٹھنے کے بعد اپنا رخ کرتے ہیں خیام حسینی کی طرف۔ عزیزان حسین، حر جس حالت میں گئے ہیں، کچھ روایات میں ملتا ہے کہ حر نے اپنے سپر کو، جو شیلڈ ہے، اس کو اپنے سر کے اوپر اپ سائڈ ڈاؤن رکھ دیا تھا۔ یہ اس زمانے میں جنگ کی علامت تھی کہ ہم لڑنے نہیں آ رہے ہیں، ہم سرنڈر ہونے آ رہے ہیں، تاکہ حسین کے اصحاب کو اندازہ ہو کہ یہ حملہ نہیں کر رہا ہے بلکہ یہ سرنڈر ہونے آ رہا ہے۔ روایات کے لحاظ سے جب اصحاب قریب پہنچے ہیں کہ حر کی زبان پر جو دعا کا جملہ تھا، اللہم اتوب الیک، خداوندہ ہم توبہ کرتے ہیں، بہت بڑا گناہ تھا یہ کہ میں نے اولاد رسول اور خصوصاً رسول کی بیٹی کی اولاد کے دل کو ہم نے تکلیف پہنچایا ہے۔ عجیب عنوان ہے کہ فاطمہ کے بارے میں خاص احترام تھا حر کے دل میں۔ اپنے اس توبہ میں بھی یہی ذکر کرتے ہیں کہ ہم نے اولاد بنت نبیک، ان کے دلوں کو ہم نے تکلیف پہنچایا ہے۔ حسین کے پاس آنے کے بعد پہلا جملہ یہی تھا کہ مولا ہم نے توبہ کی کر لی ہے اللہ کے بارگاہ میں، لیکن حق آپ کا ہم نے ضائع کیا ہے، راستہ ہم نے روکا تھا، کربلا تک ہم لوگ لے کے آئے تھے، جو کچھ ہو رہا ہے ذمہ دار ہم ہیں، کیا مولا آپ مجھے معاف کرتے ہیں؟ حسین ابن علی کریم ابن کریم مولا ہے، فرماتے ہیں میں نے معاف کر دیا، میرے خدا نے بھی تجھے معاف کر دیا ہے۔ اس کے بعد ایک وہ منزل آتی ہے کہ جہاں جناب حر امام حسین علیہ السلام سے، چونکہ روایات میں اختلاف ہے کہ جنگ کب لڑی ہے، ایک میں یہی ہے کہ حر نے چاہا تھا کہ بالکل جنگ کے بالکل آغاز میں انہیں موقع دیا جائے تاکہ اپنی جان کی قربانی پیش کریں۔ اکثر ہم اپنے جوانی کے دور میں جب تاریخ پڑھتے تھے کربلا کی، اور یہ جب فقرہ پڑھتے تھے کہ امام حسین علیہ السلام نے حر کو اجازت دے دی فوراً، تو دل میں میرے ایک سوال آتا تھا کہ مولا حر جب دشمن کی حیثیت سے آیا تھا تو آپ نے مہمان نوازی کی تھی، پانی دیا تھا، آج حر جو ہے ناصر اور مددگار بن کے آ رہا ہے، اسے روک لے، بعد میں بھیجی گیا دوسرے اصحاب کے بعد۔ یہاں اندازہ ہوتا ہے کہ جواب حسین کا وہی ہوتا کہ تجھے میری مظلومیت کے اندازہ نہیں ہے، اس وقت میرے پاس پانی تھا مہمان نوازی کے لیے، لیکن آج حسین کے پاس پانی بھی نہیں۔ حسین اتنا مجبور ہے کہ پانی سے بھی مہمان نوازی نہیں کر سکتا، لہٰذا مولا غالباً یہی جواب دیتے کہ یہ ہماری کرامت کی بات تھی کہ حر کو ہم نے پہلے بھیج دیا، اس لیے کہ جب بھی شہادت کا سلسلہ آگے بڑھے گا، یکے بعد دیگرے حبیب کی شہادت ہوگی، زہیر کی شہادت ہوگی، مختلف اصحاب کی شہادت ہوگی، پھر بنو ہاشم کی شہادت ہوگی، ہر شہادت کے بعد حر کا سر شرم سے جھک جائے، اور اس لیے حسین کہتے ہیں میرے پاس کھانا اور پانی نہیں تھا مہمان نوازی کے لیے، لیکن ہم اتنا کر سکتے تھے کہ حر کو اس شرمندگی سے محفوظ کریں، لہٰذا ہم نے پہلے جانے دیا۔ عزاداران حسین، یہ تنہا مجاہد تھا، کب تک لڑتا؟ بڑی شجاعانہ جنگ لڑی ہے، کئی لعینوں کو فنار کرنے کے بعد آخر میں جب شہادت واقع ہوتی ہے، امام حسین علیہ السلام اپنے اصحاب کے ساتھ حر کے لاش کے پاس آتے ہیں، دیکھتے ہیں کہ حر جو ہے ان کا آخری وقت ہے، زمین پر بیٹھتے ہیں، حر کا سر لیتے ہیں، حسین اپنے زانوں پر رکھتے ہیں۔ عزاداران حسین، یہ حر کے معراج کو دیکھیں، حر کے اسپریچول ڈیولپمنٹ کو دیکھیں کہ شب عاشور کہاں تھے، اور شہادت کے وقت وہ معراج ہے کہ حر کا سر حسین کے زانوں پر ہے۔ عزاداران حسین، امام حسین علیہ السلام نے ایک روایت کے مطابق ایک رومال کو نکالتے ہیں اور حر کے پیشانی پر باندھ دیتے ہیں، مولا سے اتنا کہیں گے مولا زخم اتنے لگے ہوئے ہیں کہ رومال کو پیشانی کے باندھنے سے کوئی فائدہ نہیں ہوگا۔ عجب نہیں کہ حسین وہ جواب دے کہ حر نے خاص احترام کیا تھا میری ماں فاطمہ کے سلسلے میں، اور اب یہ جانے والے ہیں اس بارگاہ میں جہاں رسول اور فاطمہ اور علی کے سامنے پیش کیے جائیں گے. یہ رومال فاطمہ کا بنا ہوا ہے, حور کے پیشانی پہ باندھ رہے ہیں تاکہ مجھے اسے احساس ہو کہ صرف ہم راضی نہیں, میری ماں فاطمہ بھی راضی ہے. عزاداران حسین, آخر میں امام نے 2 لائن مرثیے کے پڑھے ہیں. آخر میں ایک جملہ ہے جہاں دعا کرتے ہیں اللہم عظفہ فی الجنان, خداوندہ حور کو جنت میں اپنا مہمان بنا. یہ عنوان اس لیے تھا کہ حسین کہتے ہیں خداوندہ مہمان میرا تھا لیکن میں اتنا مجبور تھا, پانی سے بھی سیراب نہ کر سکا. خداوندہ حور کو اپنا مہمان بنا. الا لعنۃ اللہ علی القوم الظالمین سیعلم الذین ظلموا ای منقلب ینقلبون. خداوند اس قلیل بات قبول فرما, ہمارے گناہوں کو بخش دے, ہماری توفیقات میں اضافہ فرما. خداوند شیعان علی جہاں جہاں ان کو اپنے حفظ امان میں رکھ. امت مسلمہ میں جو تکفیری افواج کی مصیبت ہے ان کو نیست و نابود فرما. امام کے ظہور میں تعجیل فرما. ربنا تقبل منا انک انت السمیع العلیم. ماتم حسین.